calling you. The universe is calling me. It speaks both day and night. It's full of dark and light.
Hey, welcome to Sky Tour Radio. This is Mark D'Antonio here with Daryl Mason and, of course, Amanda. Hi, guys. How are you?
I'm well.
That's good. That's good. Daryl, you doing good?
I'm good.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day. Daryl's got, it's a Happy Valentine's Day. That's correct. And Daryl, you've got yourself a real, frigid Valentine's Day, don't you, out there?
Oh, yeah. The high today, I think, was minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is way low below 0 Celsius. And it might hit minus 15 Fahrenheit overnight tonight, which is, I think, minus 26 Celsius.
Holy cow.
He's saying that for the Canadian here on the call. We deal in Celsius.
Yes.
And minus 26 Celsius is freezing.
Yeah.
I don't envy you.
Anything with minus in front of it is way freezing.
I went out and cleaned off the car earlier this afternoon just to get some fresh air and exercise, and minus 4 degrees. It was darn cold. I didn't have a coat on.
Oh my gosh, that's kind of, well, I don't know. Maybe you weren't thinking today clearly, huh, Daryl?
No, I wanted to push it a little bit. Nice thing about Colorado too, with the altitude and the low air density, we get this beautiful dry powder snow, so it just sweeps off with a broom.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
You. One of my sons was chopping ice off his car, which got penned in under a 6-foot drift in the last snow.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? I just got to say hello and welcome to all of our Sky Tour Radio family here that's listening to us out there. We are going to have a wonderful show today, and we are very excited because we have a historical first that's happened, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And that's actually, well, I guess this is a night of many firsts, actually, or a week of many firsts in the world, in fact, for humanity. And before we get going, I just want to mention that Sky Tour Radio is a companion radio show to the stream by the same name, Sky Tour Livestream. And there we actually have 2 observatories, one here in Connecticut where I'm located and one in Arizona where I hope to be located. And the observatories are wonderful clear night journeys into the night sky. We broadcast live on YouTube, okay? And we show people in the chat and people that are just watching. We show people these glittering jewel boxes of rich stars and clusters. We look at wondrous phenomena like stellar nurseries, nebulae by any other name. And it's those nebulae within which stars are born and eventually planets form around these stars, and perhaps eventually life itself, as the nebula fades away over time. So it's a really great place to come and learn about the universe, to come and see the universe firsthand live, And, of course, you get to hear Daryl Mason again because he's one of the co-hosts on Sky Tour Livestream as well. And, of course, Amanda Curran. And it's us three, the happy triumvirate, and we like to share that knowledge and show people what's out there in the universe. So join us on Sky Tour Livestream if you can. You can find us on YouTube and join. It's free. So tonight on Sky Tour Radio, I did want to bring up the most important news note. I mentioned before that it was a big week for humanity, and it really was. And this is the first time ever in human history that 3 different nations all arrive at Mars in the span of 1 week. Okay, the Arab Emirates, China, and of course the USA. Now, Daryl, you've been following the Chinese and Arab Emirates missions, haven't you? What do they have planned? And I think they only have orbiters. Am I correct about that?
Yes, for the United Arab Emirates, and no for the Chinese. They have a whole lot more on their plate.
Cool. Well, tell us about it. I'd love to hear it. I mean, I know we're looking at it.
Okay. Amanda has some links she can post whenever she likes. The United Arab Emirates, evidently, out of the goodness of their hearts, it's a purely scientific mission. They have an orbiter that just went into orbit around Mars. It's called the Hope Orbiter, and they're going to study the weather on Mars. Nothing to do with oil, I guess. We haven't found oil on Mars yet. Maybe they got something up their sleeves, but they want to study the weather on Mars and contribute to scientific knowledge here on Earth. It was, I believe, it was built here at the University of Colorado, up in Boulder, along with help from Berkeley. And all I'll say in general is they're going to study the weather on Mars. Amanda, if you want to post that link, if you haven't already, you can learn more about it there. Now, the Chinese are a different matter. They went into orbit a couple of days ago also. There's video out there, and there are photos from the UAE mission. But the Chinese, they not only have an orbiter, they're going to have a lander, and there is a rover on the lander. And I don't want to give away too much because Mark's going to go into some detail about this, I think, with the NASA's Perseverance rover. But the Chinese are going to kind of do what the Perseverance is. When they have the lander and the rover, they're going to be taking samples, and they're going to be preparing them for retrieval in a future Mars mission. And I will just leave it at that. One thing I found sort of interesting, the Chinese have a really long view of things. We tend to be short-sighted here in the West, and we're just looking at the next quarterly statement. But the name of the Chinese mission is Tianwen-1, and that goes back to a poem from China over 2,000 years ago. Its name means heavenly questions. I thought that was nice.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
I love that.
Uh-huh. As far as motives go, well, we're competitors with the Chinese now, and they're going to eat our lunch one of these days if we don't stay on our toes. But that's neither here nor there in the present discussion. It's a very ambitious mission. That's it for the other two. I'll leave Perseverance up to Mark.
Well, I think that's fine. That's great. I honestly hadn't followed the Arab mission or the Chinese mission. So when I heard those were both in orbit, I actually heard about that earlier today. And Daryl just was, wonderful enough to dig into those because he'd been following them. So I thought it was really interesting to hear that China's got a lander and a rover. If you remember, we had the Pathfinder mission, which was a lander with a rover that was called Sojourner. And that was small, a little tiny thing the size of like a few shoe boxes in width, is all it was. It was small. But it was the first rover. But to be honest, if we go back to the first soft landing on Mars, you'd like to believe it was us, but it wasn't. It was actually the Soviet Union.
I had a question on that.
Yeah.
Did these three places leave at the same time because it was just their best chances of success? It was the most, or was this a little race on its own?
No, I think that's something that maybe, Daryl, you were going to possibly mention. Yes. Was the reason why three missions are there at the same time. And since you prepared it, I think you should say it because it's actually pretty cool. Okay.
Well, Amanda, if you want to post that thing about Hohmann transfer orbits, you can follow these links if you'd like to learn more, folks. You have heard me talk in the past on Sky Tour Livestream and doubtless here on the radio as well about when oppositions of Mars happen. That's when syzygy occurs between the Sun, the Earth, and Mars. You can draw a straight line between the three of them. And generally speaking, that's when Mars is closest to the Earth. Mars comes to opposition every 26 months. That's 2 years, 2 months. Okay? And it's not a coincidence that that's when the launch window to Mars is close to opposition each time, every 26 months. This gets into the mechanics of things, and I'm a mechanical sort of guy. It's what I do or did for a living. And if you like to know, how things work, why things work, look at the Hohmann transfer orbit, if Amanda posted in Discord. But I think it's fascinating. Hohmann transfer orbits are how we get from place to place in the solar system. In this case, from Earth to Mars. In the future, it could also be from Mars to Earth, but it's also how things work when we launch satellites from Earth to orbit and from Earth to the moon. Hohmann transfer orbits, they are low-energy orbits to get from one place to another. Part of the idea of this is the engineering and design of the spacecraft, and a lot of it boils down to how much fuel is needed to be successful in the mission. You can call it delta V if you want. You can look up what delta V means. Basically, it means just how much energy is available to speed up or slow down in the course of a mission overall. And that translates into how much fuel they need, which translates into how big the fuel tanks need to be, and how big the spacecraft needs to be, if that all makes sense. A Hohmann transfer orbit is the most economical way to get from one place to another up in space. Earth's orbital velocity, that is, to launch a rocket from Earth and to get it up where it will maintain an orbit around the Earth, is 17,000 miles or so, 17.5, something like that. And then to get to Earth's escape velocity, to be able to leave Earth and be out into free space, you might say, is 25,000 miles an hour. And it turns out that once you have achieved orbital velocity, 25,000, it just takes a little bit more energy to get from Earth to Mars. Of course, once you get to Mars, it's going to take more energy to slow down. But the whole idea is, as I've said, it factors into the design and size of the spacecraft, how much it's going to weigh, and orbital costs for pounds to orbit, and all that stuff. So it is not a coincidence that all three missions launched at roughly the same time in July of 2020, a little bit before opposition. You probably remember when we covered Mars opposition on Sky Tour Livestream, and I'm sure we talked about it here too. The opposition of Mars happened October last year. So there is a launch window every time that 26 months comes around. And this year it started a little bit before opposition in July, and the actual opposition was in October. And then here the landings, or the orbits or landings as the case may be, of the three missions are within a few months after opposition, so October to February. It took NASA's Perseverance mission about 8 months, I think it was, to get there. I think the Chinese did it in about 7 months. They launched a little before us. And the UAE's HOPE mission is something similar. But the long story short is, it is not a coincidence that they all launched about the same time and that they're all going to arrive, or already have arrived at Mars about the same time, within the same week. Because
they made a little game of it, though? A little race?
Maybe.
I don't think so. My personal feeling is, when you have scientists in charge, the race isn't entering your mind. Only, getting good science and getting the vehicle there safely. I mean, in that case, we're the last ones to arrive, but we have the most capability. We actually have also the best record, as we'll talk about shortly. But, what Daryl's saying too, one thing about the Hohmann transfer orbit, which I think is really interesting, is that when you leave Earth to head to Mars, okay, your spacecraft is never heading toward Mars. it's never pointing toward Mars. It's pointing to a place in space where Mars will be when you get there. But it's never, ever actually heading directly toward Mars. It's heading on a trajectory that takes it with Mars along its orbit and just gets closer to Mars because the orbit's extra velocity that takes it a little farther out of that escape velocity realm that he talked about earlier. It's a fascinating orbit, and if you were in a spacecraft looking out the front window, you'd never see Mars, and you'd wonder where the heck you're going. Only at the end, when you do what's called orbital insertion, only then might you actually see Mars, because you will join Mars parallel to your path.
Well, I can give you another Star Trek moment here. You might remember in the first Star Trek movie when Spock was in a spacesuit, they were deep inside V'ger, and there was that great big iris dilating, and he had to time it just right to know when to fly through the iris when it was open, so, he could get farther inside. And the same sort of thing happens here. Orbital dynamics, they have gotten really good at it, and they can aim at where Mars is going to be along the course of the home and transfer orbit. Interestingly, if you follow the Mars 2020 link, if Amanda hasn't posted that already, that's the NASA mission, and the home and transfer orbit, there are interesting orbital trajectory diagrams on both of those. They're animated. One thing that home and transfer orbits do is they take about half an Earth orbit to get there. And if they didn't do anything when they got to Mars, the spacecraft, would eventually follow the second half of its orbit and come back to Earth. And now this is where it gets dicey. This is where, when they get to Mars, they have to slow down, okay? Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that both the UAE's Hope spacecraft and the Chinese Tianwen-1 orbiter got there. They went into orbit around Mars, while I believe NASA's Perseverance mission is a straight shot. They're going to come in hot directly. They're not going to go into orbit. They're just going to slow down and drop straight down to Mars.
That's actually correct. They're not going to. There's not going to be any messing around with getting a circular orbit around Mars. Actually, in fact, is it the Emirates mission that's actually going to be an elliptical orbit when it finally settles down and stay in an elliptical orbit?
I think so. You'd know better than me.
It's going to be like 100 kilometers away, then 50,000 kilometers away. It's actually going to have really elliptical path, which is part of the mission for studying the weather.
Yeah. Now, when they got there, or when we get there, they have to expend some more Delta V, that's rocket fuel and oxidizer, to match up with Mars. And if you look at those orbital trajectory diagrams at the Mars 2020 site or the Home and Transfer Orbit site, in Perseverance's case, I found it fascinating that they actually are running a little bit ahead of Mars right now. And so whenever they slow down, they're actually going to be falling back toward Mars, which I just thought was interesting. And that may, again, be a matter of lessening how much fuel they need to achieve their objectives, to slow down and basically hit Mars head on.
Yeah. And the thing is, they still have to slow down enough. They have to do this maneuver to actually slow down enough to enter the Martian atmosphere and not actually burn up. Because although the Martian atmosphere is thin, it's not that thin that it will just allow you to just come, whipping in. It's going to actually impose a lot of friction on the aeroshell, the part that hits the atmosphere first.
Yes.
I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's probably going to come in at around like 3 kilometers per second, which is around 6,000 plus miles an hour. And it's going to have to slow down, from there. And when it does, It's going to then deploy that drogue chute, and then it's going to deploy the 3 mains. And once the mains come out, or I forget if it's 1 or 3 mains. I think it's 3. And then what it's going to do is it's going to be watching those mains with cameras. That's another thing about this lander. With the Emirates mission and the Chinese mission and the Mars 2020 mission, there's literally going to be close to 30 or 35 cameras live on Mars at one time, doing a variety of things. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, most of those cameras are on the 2020 mission. But, the 2020 mission is really cool, as Daryl was alluding to. And, it was launched on July 30th, which, as we know, was over the summer, of course. And it's going to touch down around 1 p.m. On February 18th, which is what, Thursday? Is that Thursday? Where are we looking here?
I do believe
it's 4 days.
16, 17, 18. Yep, Thursday.
Okay, so it'll touch down this coming Thursday around 1 p.m. Pacific time or 4 p.m. Eastern. It's like 12:55 and 3:55. However, right now there's an 11-minute delay in the signals because that's how long it takes a radio signal, which travels at the speed of light, to get to Mars and from Mars. So it's a 22-minute round-trip time. If you send a message, it'll be there in 11 minutes, and then it'll take another 11 minutes to get the thing back that says, okay, I got your message. It's a real slow conversation.
Yeah.
Which is why the rovers actually roll at such a slow pace on Mars. It's a very deliberate, slow, methodical methodology because they don't want to move them too far and then come back and find out that they ran into a boulder or went into a ditch. So they only move a certain amount prescribed motion each day and do a certain amount of scientific stuff each day. And they have an energy budget to worry about too, depending on where the sun is, because Mars does rotate. It has an orbital period, a little longer than the Earth's day. Okay, and that rotation is something that will bring sunlight to light a solar panel, say, on a craft that needs it. But on a craft that uses like a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, which is basically a nuclear furnace, effectively, that powers everything, then they don't care about that. It can operate day or night, but they will, of course, use the heat from this object at night, these generators at night, to warm the craft, and I believe that Perseverance uses an RTG, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, to get all of its power. And they use it to warm the circuits to keep the batteries from freezing, for instance, because they do need battery power as well. So when it finally touches down, the process by which it touches down is the same one that was used for the Curiosity rover. Now, that was such a successful technique called the sky crane that they're going to use it again. Now, if you think about it, they're landing something at the size and almost weight of a small car on Mars. And they're doing it not with the bouncy balls like the other rovers landed, okay, from inside the balls and then open up the pedals after that dizzying bounce for upwards of 45 minutes. But this is going to be a rover is inside this entry vehicle, which is coming down into the atmosphere. And there's an aeroshell that keeps the heat, of course, from hitting the rover. Just behind that is the rover, tucked up underneath this main vehicle, the other half of the vehicle. And the aeroshell drops away once the drogue chute deploys and most of the heating of the atmosphere is over. And now the rover is stuck up inside this half of the vehicle as the drogue chute is deploying. Then the drogue chute goes away, and this sky crane, that's the sky crane thing, falls out of that upper half and activates its rockets. Its rockets then bring the rover down to within a few tens of feet of the surface. And then the rover is lowered down on cables from this sky crane. And it's like 4 cables. Just as it hits the surface of Mars, it gets the all clear. The cables are cut and the sky crane zips up into the sky, where it then crashes some distance away, perhaps a half mile or more away from where the lander or the rover landed. And then, of course, the rover is free to now begin its journey. I mean, all the things that can go wrong. It's amazing that this worked on Curiosity. It was perfect. And then Curiosity, which landed in 2012, is still cranking around Mars like nothing. I think that's pretty interesting. It tells you something about our engineering, doesn't it? I think it's a really a successful mission. And Curiosity has that Mars Science Laboratory built in. It's the most elaborate laboratory ever placed on Mars. I mean, come on, the thing was the size of a vehicle, So bottom line is that we ended up having a lot of really interesting Martian missions, and this one promises to be even more spectacular. I know that we're going to see a lot more. I know that we're going to be having a great time. And I know that we're going to see a lot of new science, especially possibly seeing things that we've never seen before, like potentially signs of early life on Mars, or even better, signs of current life on Mars. That's a long shot. It's a long shot. But then again, we have creatures on this world, extremophiles. We've talked about them many times. And these extremophiles have been very, very, robust. They're very, very robust. And they will last a long time. Tardigrades, Daryl mentioned it on one of the shows, tardigrades will often find themselves, without any kind of food or water or air, and they go into a hibernation, cryptobiosis. And so, where can we go from here? Well, I know we have to go to a break right now, but that's one thing we have to do. But when we get back, we're going to talk about the Perseverance rover and all these really cool instruments, and especially the cameras. You will be amazed at what this thing is going to see and video capture. We'll be right back. This is Mark with Sky Tour Radio with Daryl and Amanda, and a special guest coming up in the next hour.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Please listen. Now is not the time to fear. When your immune system is strong, shields up. You have very little worries. If your immune system is compromised, you're susceptible to all viruses. I say shields up and no fear. Try Heart Love from getthetea.com. Heart Love has a special ingredient called allicin. It comes from the healing part of the garlic plant. No garlic breath, No garlic leaking out your pores, just pure immune-building ingredients that gets your shields up. Heart Love is a unique blend of herbs that loves to build you up. Google garlic and know the benefits. One Heart Love pill is equal to 20 cloves of garlic. 20 cloves. Shields up. You've heard of our Life Change Cleansing Tea at GetTheTea.com. Now try Heart Love. And by the way, take your blood pressure and watch weekly what happens. So here's how to purchase. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. And build your shields. That's GetTheTea.com. Mention Ray in the coupon code and hit apply and receive free shipping.
We are the contact for alternative research topics. The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
Hey, folks, guess what? We're back, and we're live again. It's Mark here with Skyter Radio. We're talking about the Perseverance rover, which is landing this coming Thursday on Mars at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Don't miss it. There will be streams. Bill Skywatcher is probably going to stream it, and I may join him on that stream. So come along and listen if you like. Now, when we talk about things that are going on in the landing sequence, one of the things that we want to hear about is what happens during the entry phase. What happens in that moment, those moments? There's something, for instance, where when you enter the atmosphere, we find that the ionization of the air around the vehicle as it enters will prevent any signals from getting out. It's called the radio blackout. And that radio blackout is a time that is terrifying to anyone. We had it with the space shuttle. It was re-entering our atmosphere on our own planet, and no one could hear anything from the shuttle. So they're all biting their nails and hoping they survived. And we know, unfortunately, in the case of one mission, that they did not. So it's hard to go to space, and it's even harder to land on another planet. So what happens during that time? All right, and as Daryl will tell you, it's the 7 minutes of terror. And I don't know about you, Daryl, but I'm going to be sitting here pacing, probably pulling out some hair, because I'm going to want to know what happened.
Oh yeah. Well, the 7 minutes of terror is when Mars is entering, when Perseverance is entering Mars's atmosphere, and all the way to landing. Plus, there's going to be an additional 11 minutes of terror from the time that Perseverance actually lands until we get the signal from Mars as it traverses from Mars to Earth at the speed of light, because Mars is 11 light minutes away, that we ain't going to know for 18 minutes or so. But the 7 minutes of terror thing, as Mark alluded to, that's when Perseverance is going to drop into Mars's atmosphere. And that's when, just like the space shuttle and Earth missions do, it's going to heat up in the ionosphere. It's going to get so hot, and the atmosphere being so hot around it, it's going to cut off all radio transmissions until it lands. But beyond that, the other part of that 7 minutes of terror is the actual physical process. Again, I'm a mechanic, and I like to talk about the mechanical parts of it. Is the actual process of Perseverance making it from space down to the surface of the planet. Mars's atmosphere is only a few thousandths as thick as Earth's, and it has never been easy to land on Mars. They have to slow down enough to make it safely to the ground. Plus, they all have to be operating in the same units of measurement, which is what happened with one of the Mars landers some years back. Mark probably remembers this, when somebody didn't do their conversions from metric to standard or vice versa, and the lander came in too hot and crashed. because, hey, there's metric and standard aren't the same thing. But the whole thing, because Mars has such a rare atmosphere, that we have to be a lot more creative in how we're going to slow down enough from what's basically an orbital or an escape velocity down to Mars' surface, where the velocity will be zero. Now, this is why the early landers, I guess it was the Spirit and Opportunity, they used the bouncing ball method, where the thing was basically inside a great big inflated a bunch of bouncy balls, and it bounced across the atmosphere.
Like a buckyball.
The buckyballs, thank you. And finally came to a rest, and it opened and unfolded, and the rovers came out. They founded Curiosity. They got fancy, and they used the hovering thing. They're going to lower it down on cables with, whatever that's called. It worked well with Curiosity, and they're keeping their fingers crossed it's going to work well with Mars too. And in this case, the last thing compounding the whole 7 minutes of terror, that, as I mentioned earlier, well, in the case of the Chinese lander, it's going to be coming in from Martian orbital velocity, which I don't remember what that is offhand, not basically escape velocity, which is still, what Opportunity or what Perseverance, I guess, is going to be moving at, or was, that they only have to slow down from orbital velocity, Martian orbital velocity, for the Chinese craft. Since we are coming in extra hot, we're not going into orbit. We're coming straight from space, hitting Mars hard and fast, and slowing down, and still hopefully making a successful landing. That this just compounds the 7 minutes of terror, okay? Because we're coming in so darn hot.
Yeah.
The other part is that 11 minutes that we have to wait after a, cross your fingers, hopefully successful landing, just to account for the time it takes the signal to get from Mars back to Earth to tell us whether it was successful or not.
Yeah, it's going to be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I mean,
exciting.
Yeah. But something. I what it's like. It's like when they shipped the SkyTour Livestream West telescopes and equipment out west, even though it was a friend of ours from P&K Space Imaging doing the driving and taking it out there, I was terrified that something might go wrong along the way. Turns out something did get broken, and that was with someone who knows how to handle equipment. So we're in the process of fixing it now remotely. It's kind of hard, strange, but the bottom line is, that those 7 minutes of terror, when you're sitting in Jet Propulsion Laboratory out in Pasadena, waiting for word that your rover has started to deploy and touch down safely. I mean, that's when you can start to breathe again, right?
Well, that's why they celebrate so much.
Yeah, it's going to be toned down with the pandemic this year, but I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of smiles underneath those masks, and probably a lot of long exhales, like, and then tomorrow morning, the next morning, they're going to be saying, okay, it's time to start the science. Let's do what we came here for, people. And then that's it. They're going to start working on the science. Then that all kicks in. The scientists come in and they sit down, and they the management team that manages the science team is going to be there to, pass along everything that has to be passed along to all of us. We are just anxious to hear. It's going to be a fascinating thing. And I know that Sky Crane, it was the Sky Crane thing you were talking about. The Sky Crane is going to drop the rover down on those cables. But if you watch the animation, there's a beautiful animation out there that shows the entire process of this whole aeroshell, the whole vehicle streaming into Martian orbit, and then finally deploying the rover down those cables. Everything has to work perfectly.
Yep. Yeah, there's a great NASA animation on YouTube. It's a few minutes long that detail every step of the way from space down to landing.
Yeah, and it's a great video. I've watched it several times. Why? I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at it saying, okay, that'll work, in my head, because I know how they cut the cables loose. I understand how they begin the process of doing the braking and stuff like that with the sky crane. Interesting thing about the sky crane, when Curiosity was lowered to the surface, as soon as the wheels touch, the signal sent, contact is made. They cut the cables, and the sky crane takes off and just crashes some hundreds of yards away, as I mentioned. Well, Curiosity actually captured that. You remember that photo, Daryl? There was a photo of the cloud rising from the crash of the sky crane hundreds of yards away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or whatever they call it, they managed to catch it from space.
That's right. And you could actually see they captured things like deflated parachutes on the surface of Mars. I mean, we're actually littering the red planet already, and we're not even there on Mars yet, But still, the Mars 2020 mission represents a huge leap in technology for us, okay? And as those of you know, the rover was named Perseverance, and it literally, as I said, it's going to arrive in 4 days. But guess what? There was about 70 previous missions to Mars, and only 34 were successful, and one of those was only partially successful. Now, the biggest winner was NASA. They had 20 missions, of which 18 were successful. I mean, that's pretty good. But the biggest loser, sadly, was the former Soviet Union and later on Russia. Okay? They made up 31 missions to Mars. They had 31 missions to Mars. 25 of them were complete failures. One was partially successful, and there were 6 that were successful. Now, the reason is they have a history of weak design, but it turns out that they're better with orbital mechanics. They can do the orbital stuff in our Earth orbit. Okay, the Soviets can launch a Soyuz spacecraft and successfully reach the space station like clockwork. They do a good job. Elon Musk is giving them a challenge. Okay, he's already sent astronauts to the International Space Station. All right, and they will be sending more astronauts with his platform.
Question there?
Yeah.
Didn't Russia recently launch a Soyuz to the space station, and it got there in like 3 hours? The whole mission, I mean, from launch to docking with the ISS just took a few hours, if I remember correctly. Whereas you'll see if we did it with a shuttle, or as Musk does it with his Crew Dragon spacecraft, maybe it's just a matter of taking their time, but they took a day or several days just to get there.
That's correct. You might be right about that. I don't remember that mission. Maybe I blocked it from my memory because they did so much better than we did. But just kidding. I would really praise them tremendously if they did. But to make it in 3 hours means that they have to literally arrive in the correct orbit right up front, which is actually kind of dangerous because there's other stuff. I mean, there's literally, if you look on the actual in the actual numbers, there's millions of pieces of space junk up there, counting nuts and bolts and so forth. Okay, any one of which can just blow right through your spacecraft if it's in an orbit that's different from yours and you're passing through an orbit that it's in. It's going to be moving faster as you move farther away from the Earth, so it stands the chance to just blow right through your craft. So you have to know where all these pieces of space junk are, and the Russians are actually known for taking chances. So maybe that's why it was done in record time.
Yeah.
In fact, go ahead, Amanda.
No, go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
No, well, actually, it was a question from chat, but I was just thinking, I didn't hear you guys mention it. Maybe I missed it. You guys are talking about like coming in too fast and accounting for break time and everything, but also that they can mess up the conversion rates and stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any way a ship can be going too fast and miss? Protus
That's
asked that.
happened. That's happened with the mission to Mars. They
Yeah.
missed the planet entirely.
Tell
They
us
didn't
more.
miss the planet. They hit it better than they thought they were.
Well, that's one that did, but there's also one mission that actually missed the planet entirely. So their calculation for the home and transfer orbit was wrong.
So what
So
happened?
they missed the planet, and it just went sailing off, and that was the end of that. It was
Never to be heard from again. They just lost contact with it. It got so far, or
well,
like,
it
do we
wasn't-
know? Did it crash into anything after that, or I want a conclusion?
I know you do, and I'm sure that spacecraft would love to have a conclusion to know what it's. I don't know. I don't know the conclusion. But if it doesn't make its target, then there's very little motivation to try and figure out where it's going, because there's nothing they can do with it. You know, and that's really sad. I mean, I prefer to see all these missions succeed, to be honest. You know, I really would. That's the best.
Oh,
possible.
but could you imagine? Like, their hearts must have just dropped. Like, how close would they be to realize it was going to be a total miss?
Well, they probably knew like a day ahead of time that it was not going to make it, because
sad.
they had time to refine their calculations and say, "Hey, we got a problem here, Boris. We're going to miss the planet."
And there's nothing they can do at that point.
No.
But it's like shooting pool, you know, playing billiards. Once the cue ball hits the other ball, it's on its way, and there's not much you can do to change it.
You
Just
can't.
imagine being the guy who forgot to convert from standard to metric or vice versa.
Right? That's what I was
I'd hate to
thinking.
be that guy. Yeah, I want to say it was the Mars Polar Lander or something. I forget
I
what the
think
mission
it
was called.
Yeah, I know there was a Beagle lander too, and that just failed to deploy one side of its array. And it was that side of the array that actually had the Earth communication antenna on it. So, but from space, they saw a Beagle sitting there dutifully on the plane, but with only one panel open. They captured it from space, which is really just a very poignant, beautiful shot.
That was a British mission, was it not?
Was that Beagle?
I think so, yes.
Okay, I think that was a
Or
Yeah.
ESA or something.
ESA. It was ESA. Yeah, it was ESA, European Space Agency mission. Yeah, it was. Those are heartbreaking. You know, you spend millions and millions and millions of dollars to get to Mars, and you're also employing, 40, 50, 60 or more people in the actual mission control segment, and then you have all the engineers you employed previously. You've got a lot riding on this, and a lot of people's livelihoods on the line.
Oh, yeah. And imagine, whoever that guy with the chest protector was who didn't do the conversion. He's probably a dog catcher or selling insurance now or something, you know.
Yeah, that's... I don't want to be that guy. I'd never be that guy. You can't develop these things in a vacuum, and so...
Right. Well, it doesn't look good on the resume,
Yeah. And what's your claim to fame? I crashed a probe into Mars. Oh, was it meant? Absolutely not. We'll get back to you. Here's the thing. Okay, when we get finally down to Mars, and I actually really have a strong feeling we'll succeed, because we do have statistics on our side for the past missions based on our ethic of creating spacecraft that last. Spirit and Opportunity lasted way beyond their warranty period. Trust me, years beyond their warranty period. Curiosity is still going. All right, it is literally over a decade old, practically, on the red planet, and it's still cruising along. Now, why does it still have power? It's using those radioisotope thermoelectric generators, those little RTGs they're called, the little nuclear reactors. No, they can't be destroyed. No, they can't explode. No, they can't cause, problems. And there's nuclear fuel on board, and that fuel will last many, many, many years. Way more years than they project the life of the probe. But eventually it will run out, and Curiosity will just grind to a halt and be done forever. And then there won't be any danger because the RTG will be out of fuel. So
You said Curiosity. You mean Perseverance?
no, I was talking about Curiosity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I see your confusion. I think if you're confused, people were too.
Yeah, well, you know how these things tend to, they grow and expand to fill available space. I bet as long as that power source is still functioning and the craft is still functioning, that mission is still going to be functioning years and years from now.
Yeah.
The one concern I have is the complexity.
Yeah.
It's Murphy's Law, and you're just multiplying chances for things to go wrong. And I like the bouncy concept of the earlier landers. And when you get into rocket-powered, dynamic, the thing slinging it down on cables, and it's got to disconnect, and then it's got to fly off in the distance so it doesn't get in the way. All that stuff, you're just increasing complexity immensely.
Yeah, that's true. But keep in mind that when we talk about our success stories, our success rate is really good for Mars. So we have that on our side. We also have the fact that the engineering, the things that go wrong, it's not the power source that goes wrong on these craft. It's things like the wheels and the bearings in the wheels. Now, Mars can be, 90 below zero or more or less, okay? But it's got to be able to, these things have to be able to withstand that cold, and for them to be able to manage Curiosity through the Martian winters and the Martian summers, and for it not to have any serious problems since for years now, it shows that we're getting somewhere with our engineering development. And I think that we're going to be very pleased with what Perseverance can do. We talked about, and that's why Curiosity has stayed functional since 2012, is because the power source is this plutonium-238, and the heat is generated by the natural decay of this radioactive fuel. It turns into electricity, and we won't go into how these things work, these RTGs, but that's what has powered 50 spacecraft so far. We had Curiosity, Vikings 1 and 2, Galileo, Cassini, New Horizons used one, and then this rover. All right. Now, one of the really cool things about this rover, or this lander, I should say, which we call the Sky Crane with the rover in it, is that on its way down, if it sees something that it can't, it doesn't think is safe to land in, it can actually divert to a safe location. And this is it's called terrain relative navigation. This thing is going to do that. It can divert around obstacles on the descent. All right. And then it has something called a range trigger, which is going to tell the parachute when to open so the rover can land closer to the prime work site. Right? So this small little mid-drop correction can save up to a year of travel to the actual work site. You see? Just incredible. And it's going to be Jezero Crater where it lands, actually on the delta, the outflow material. I actually did a 3D print on our STL machine here of Jezero location. And it has that lobate structure, these lobes of material. And that's where the Perseverance rover is going to be rolling around and exploring this place where water used to fill a lake as big as Lake Tahoe in the United States. It's going to be doing some very, very interesting collection stuff, too. It's going to collect the 20 pencil-sized cores, and it's going to store them in a little cache on board. And later, there'll be automated missions that can retrieve them. And so they're already talking about a way to get a small rocket that can land and pick up the samples and then get back to Earth. So, and that would be with a Hohmann transfer orbit in reverse, in fact. So once all this happens, okay, and the probe gets into things and the rover starts tooling around, there's another thing that we have waiting for us down there that we've never done before. And we're going to talk about all the other cameras when we come back from the break in a few minutes, but I can tell you this. This rover has its own little robot, and that's a drone. It has a drone helicopter that it's going to fly. How about that? Okay, the Perseverance rover robot has its own little baby robot. that it's going to fly. And it's called the Ingenuity helicopter. It's only 4 pounds. The main package, the size of the core of this thing is only about the size of a softball. But the rotors are amazing. Okay, Mars only has a 6.5 millibar atmosphere compared to Earth's 1,000 plus millibars. So with an atmosphere that thin, the blades have to be a certain shape. They have to scoop more air. And they're going to be twin counter-rotating rotors, one above the other. And each blade's 4 feet long, so it's going to be pretty amazing. Now we're closing in on a break here, but when we come back, I want to talk about the instruments that are on board, and then the cameras. And then we're going to bring in a special guest to talk to us about a few more of the things that we talked about last week. So this is Mark D'Antonio with Daryl Mason and Amanda Curran and a special guest hiding in the wings. And we will be back right after these words.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com. Or to speak with a trained consultant. Give Angioprim a call at 954-882-7221. That's 954-882-7221.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Hey everyone, this is Nick Redfern, and you're listening to Sky Tour Radio with Mark D'Antonio on the KGRA network, and so are the Men in Black.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Hey, welcome back. This is Mark, and this is Sky Tour Radio, last I checked. And we're talking about the upcoming landing of the Perseverance rover that is going to happen this Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time and 1 p.m. Pacific Time. You have to be around for that. Just look for all the streams online, and Who knows? You might even see one of us in one of those streams. Hint, hint. In any case, I was talking about the many different pieces of equipment and stuff that is on this rover. And I am really convinced that we are on the precipice of setting up for a human presence on Mars. That's what the whole point of Mars 2020 is. We were talking about this drone. This drone is going to have the Perseverance rover is going to have its own drone to fly around on Mars. And controllers on the ground here in NASA's JPL are not going to be able to control it. They're only going to be able to say, have it turn on for 30 seconds there, Perseverance, and then turn it off. Let's make sure that everything works. And then the Perseverance rover is going to manage everything from there. So it's going to be kind of cool, and it's going to do some short hops and then maybe longer hops. And it's going to be doing literally a month of testing prior to its first flight, just so you know. It'll spin up, then spin down. All right, so it's high risk, it's high gain for that particular piece. The other thing that is on this particular landing package is a set of microphones. It's actually on the descent module as it's coming through the Martian atmosphere. We're going to hear the sound of entry into the Martian atmosphere. And then once on Mars, we're going to hear the sounds of Mars. When the drone flies, we're going to hear the sounds of the drone. And we're going to hear the sounds of the Perseverance motors whirring and moving. That's a very important thing to hear, because you can hear resonant noises in a motor that can tell you there's something wrong. That's a huge thing that's very, very different from any other rover that's ever been placed on Mars. We'll be able to hear if there's a problem in the motors. We'll be able to hear if there's grit. We'll be able to hear everything. That's going to be really impressive. That'll be really cool. And
we got a rod knocking.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, I found it interesting in my reading about all this that a lot of Perseverance was actually built with off-the-shelf components from Curiosity.
Yeah.
And one change they did make was the wheels. You might have seen in the news in the past that Curiosity suffered damage to its wheels. I guess they were maybe a little too delicate in their design or construction that they started seeing holes opening up in the treads and stuff. That they did replace the wheels, but a lot of the other stuff is off the shelf from the Curiosity mission.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, the wheels were broke, so they did fix it. I like that. You're right. So now, one of the things about the microphones, why do we care? Well, I told you that we could use it to detect sounds in the motors that might be wrong or off. That could tell us to either baby the motors a little or something. But that's not all it's for. Believe it or not, this sound is important because the sound with the temperature, the wind speed, and the relative humidity, and there is humidity there, it's just very low, it'll actually help design shelters for the astronauts. Remember, the wind is going to be very faint because the air is so thin. And really, really high speeds are necessary to even lift these talcum powder consistency dust off the surface. But when it does come off the surface, it can actually stay aloft for months. So it's important to be able to know how that stuff is going to affect things. So they have a sample of an astronaut's helmet on the rover that will be there exposed to the elements. They have a sample of the astronauts' suits that they expect to wear to see how they will react to the Martian environment. Really important stuff, that's really important. Things that you just wouldn't think about. And then they have an instrument called RIMFAX, okay, RIMFAX. It's a radar imager for Mars subsurface experiment. It's basically ground-penetrating radar, which is going to be able to study the interior of Mars down to a depth of about 30 feet or 10 meters below the surface. It can detect ice, it can detect salt, it can detect briny, salty water, and it can detect water. So it's the first ever radar imager sent to the surface of Mars. And
Chinese have one too.
Well, that's a good thing because we need to have that. We need to know from different locations on Mars what it looks like. So I'm glad. And then we have the Mars Environmental Dynamics Analyzer, MEDA, M-E-D-A. And this is going to measure dust and weather on Mars more accurately than ever before. So all these things I just mentioned that are going to be needed to learn about habitability, the MEDA experiment is going to do. But perhaps the most important experiment on board is MOXIE.
I knew you were going to say that. Got to get that plug-in for that New England soft drink.
That's right, huh? MOXIE, which some of you remember is a drink, okay? MOXIE is the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. What the heck is that? In simplistic terms that everyone can understand, even an elementary school kid who needs to learn about this because they'll probably be the astronauts to go to Mars. MOXIE is going to take the carbon dioxide atmosphere, which is 96% of Martian atmosphere, and it's going to take that CO2 and it's going to take in 2 molecules of CO2 and give back oxygen, O2. It's a way to extract oxygen from the carbon dioxide, and they're going to send up, they already sent up, it's on the Perseverance rover, a 1% scale model of the actual O2 generator. And it's about the size of a car battery. And it's going to be able to turn the carbon dioxide into oxygen. You can see why that's a huge, huge plus. Number one, we breathe it. So clearly, we won't have to bring all this oxygen with us. The astronauts that went to the moon brought the oxygen with them. Right? And that limited how much time they could spend on the surface. They couldn't generate more oxygen. So basically, they had a certain amount of time, a couple of days they could spend on the moon, then they had to come home. On Mars, if you can make oxygen, you can stay there as long as the mission allows. All right? Now, it's only 1% the size. They're going to send one that's even bigger, and that's going to be able to generate more O2, or diatomic oxygen, 2 oxygen atoms together. And these atoms, this molecule, is also used for something else that's very, very important. It's the production of rocket fuel. So that is what MOXIE is going to do. And Daryl, you're right. I think it's the most important experiment, not just because it's named after a soda. It's not, obviously, but because it's the most important human habitability experiment that can be done.
Oh, I know how these people think. It's acronym fever, and hey, it's going to be the pause that refreshes. You betcha. You might be right. You might be right. And by the way, if none of you have ever tried MOXIE, give it a try. Check it out. It's a really cool drink. I'm not getting paid. I am not a paid shill for the company that makes MOXIE, if it's even still made. The next instrument is PIXL. That's the planetary instrument for X-ray lithochemistry. In other words, what's the composition of Mars on the surface, and can we figure out really what's going on at a much finer level than before? And then we have the Sherlock instrument, which is the scanning habitable environments with Raman luminescence organics and chemicals. And this is, as it hints, it's going to look for organics on Mars, organic chemicals, either native or delivered by meteorites and asteroids. It's critical for spacesuit study to see if astronauts' spacesuits will work on Mars. A really important thing. Now, there's another one called Watson on the robotic arm, and that's another one that's going to be kind of a little observer. It's going to be able to watch other experiments happening and figure out what's going on from its perspective. And then finally, we have 23 different cameras on this rover. You're going to have cameras that are looking up at the parachutes as it's coming down. You're going to have cameras looking down at Mars to help guide the descent to a safe location. We have hazard cameras called HazCams. There's 6 of them, 1 for each wheel. We have a cache cam, which is going to look at the little pencil-sized cores we talked about earlier. It's absolutely incredible. And Perseverance is going to be able to store these for a later mission, as I mentioned. So for the terrifying journey to the surface we talked about, Daryl talked about the 7 minutes of terror, there's cameras to document the expected safe descent and landing. And this is the Entry, Descent, and Landing Camera Suite. And these are abbreviated EDL, Entry, Descent, and Landing.
We do that because NASA and us astronomers love to use acronyms. I don't know why. It's just a thing.
I wonder what the pay grade is of the guy who thinks up all these acronyms.
I can't even tell you. So the EDL cams are going to include a number of cameras that are going to look up at the parachutes that are deployed. And those are called the parachute uplook cameras. Go figure. There's 3 of them. Then there's a descent stage downlook cam. There's one of those. And there's the rover uplook camera, number 1. And that one's interesting because after that gets onto the ground on Mars, the rover uplook camera is looking up. And it's going to see the sky crane disappear and go away. And it's going to have video, high-res video of the sky crane leaving the location and crashing elsewhere on Mars. And you're going to see all that. This is all video. This is all high-res stuff, man. We're moving into, NASA's not dummy. They're no dummies, man. They know the value of a good video, and they're going to have video galore on this. And
it's all going to be on YouTube.
You betcha. And there's going to be a lander vision system we talked about to help guide it to different locations. The parachute cams will make sure the deployment's proper. The descent stage download cams are going to allow us to see what it looks like when the rover is actually being lowered to the surface by the sky crane. Can you imagine that? From on board the sky crane, you're going to watch the rover leaving you going down to the surface in a video. And so I think that's going to be cool. Can you say viral? I have a feeling that you're going to have viral videos that are just crazy good out there, So in addition to those, that's 16 cameras, okay? There's yet more to round out the total to 23. So the remaining 7 are going to be the mast cam Z cameras. Those are the cameras on the mast. And that's actually going to allow us to do left and right eye stereo images for full 3D imaging. Wow, that's cool. And then for microscopic imaging, there's a super cam. All right. And then there's 5 more additional cameras for each particular analysis instrument that's going to be tied to these different packages on board. So in other words, what we learned from Curiosity was there's so many things we can't see, darn it all, and we need to see these things. So that's what this is doing. It's incredible. And in the meantime, they actually had to update the whole deep space network. In fact, there's only one antenna, I think, that was capable of seeing this. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I think that was the Voyager Deep Space Network upgrade. But they had to upgrade the Deep Space Network to be able to take in all this additional data that's going to be coming back. So as Daryl says and has said before, he's a little concerned about the technology. I'm not going to lie. I'm concerned about the technology too, but I do have faith in the engineers. After all, Curiosity was an absolute unmitigated success. Spirit and Opportunity, absolute and unmitigated successes. Now, that all said, that's happening Thursday at 1 p.m. On Pacific time and 4 p.m. Eastern time. Perseverance touches down on Mars and begins the science. All right. Now, moving to our next segment here, if you recall, last week we had that amazing Arizona artist who made the door of our SkyTour Livestream West Observatory come up with a whole bunch of very interesting questions that she wanted to ask. And at the time, we didn't get through all the questions. And I thought maybe we would take some more of that time today. So our special guest is Tara Duelis. Tara, come off of mute and say hello to everybody, please.
Hello, everybody.
Well,
Tara.
Amanda, Mark, hello.
Welcome back, Tara.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Now, the questions you asked were based on our discussion of the Earth's rotation rate that's actually been slowing down over time due to the sun and the moon's combined influence on our oceanic and geologic tidal bulge that they both work on, they both create. So over time, our day has gone from 4 hours to 12 hours to 18 hours to 23 hours, 56 minutes. It'll eventually, given enough time, it'll eventually reach the point where it'll be tidally locked to the moon. In fact, the Earth is in the process of locking to the moon, where the same face of the moon will always face the Earth, and the same face of the Earth will always face the moon. So people on that side are going to be like, oh, man, I don't have dark skies anymore at night. And the people on the other side are going to say, I've got dark sky all the time and no more moon to worry about. And if it happens on my side, I'm going to move to the other side. Okay. Kiddingly. That won't happen until long after the sun has gone out from lack of its fuel. And by that point, the Earth will just be a cinder. So what I wanted to do was to bring up the rest of Tara's questions. And we're going to call this segment Tara's Cosmos. And if it goes over well, then perhaps we'll repeat it on a weekly basis. So Tara, I want to welcome you to Sky Tour Radio once again. And I would love to hear you ask Amanda, Daryl, and myself some of the questions that were left over from last week.
All right. It sounds great. Okay, here we go. First one. So what about those that believe dinosaurs and humans lived side by side based on fossil footprints? What do you think about that? And how does that fit into the rotation factor, if at all?
Okay, that's a fascinating question because you combined several things in one question. Now, in terms of dinosaurs and humans being side by side, those have been shown to be mistaken identity, as in mistaken rock stratification, rock stratigraphy. Sorry, the strata that the dinosaur footprints were in appeared to be in the same that the human footprints were in, but it didn't take into account the folding and bending from tectonic activity that brought those layers into each other's proximity over millions of years, and hundreds of thousands of years for the human footprints. So the fact is, that part has nothing to do with the rotation. But do earthquakes and tectonic activity have anything to do with the rotation? Now that's a much more detailed question to answer, because the fact is it might very well be that the earthquakes and tectonic activity has been influenced by the rotation rate of the Earth. And there's some studies out there that I actually read which talked about that. So you're onto something there, Tara. Daryl, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Oh, all I can say is I have wondered in the past. There are dinosaur tracks visible here in Colorado. They're out in the middle of nowhere, down in the southeastern part of the state. They're really cool. I've never seen them. I hope to someday. I wondered what the Native Americans in the area might have thought. If they saw a recognizable footprint of some darn big critter, lizard feet, and what they must have thought, what stories, what legends that could have generated.
That's really good, actually. And Daryl, I got to just go back one moment. You mentioned in our previous discussion about the Russian mission that actually reached the space station in 3 hours. You were absolutely correct. And I want to thank Carol Carl, the host of Behind the Obsidian Curtain, Friday nights at 7 p.m., Amanda? Is it?
7 p.m. Eastern, Friday nights, yeah.
Yeah, she writes, the Russian Soyuz MS-17 spacecraft carrying NASA astronaut Kate Rubins and Russian cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Sergei Kudseverkov docked with the space station at 4:48 a.m., just 3 hours and 3 minutes after lifting off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And that was on October 14th, 2020. So, Daryl, there you go. Carol, let's come to the rest.
Thank you, Carol. Well, you talk about express service, but I think, as you alluded to earlier, the Russians have a way of doing things quick and dirty, and sometimes it catches them and bites them in the butt. That's right. In fact, a quick and dirty installation on the ground in the Soyuz led to a leak at the ISS. They actually drilled a hole behind a piece of an instrument in the Soyuz capsule and plugged it with material that wasn't anywhere up to the task, and it popped
in orbit and began a loss of oxygen from the International Space Station because, of course, the Soyuz is open and has hoses going down into it to help keep it cool because it's exposed to the sun out there, and there's circulating air down there. So the oxygen loss in the station was noticeable, and it was because somebody on the ground rushed through a process and tried to plug a hole with the wrong material. So
Russian bubblegum.
Effectively true, yes.
So, the old story about Russians, the Americans spent thousands of dollars designing an ink pen that would write into space, while the Russians just, used a pencil instead. Could they go up with a piece of cellophane tape or masking tape, or I'm sure they got something better that, they could just plug the hole with?
Yeah, I think so. And so coming back now, back to our questions from Tara with Tara's Cosmos, our wonderful segment here. Tara, did you get the answer? Do you understand the answer about the dinosaurs and humans, how they appear to have lived side by side, but that was actually a mistake in the way the stratigraphy was, the way the rock layers were?
Absolutely, and I had never heard it explained like that, and that makes so much sense. So thank you. It's awesome.
Very good. So ask more.
I don't know.
Okay.
I saw them on the Flintstones together, so I still have my doubts.
Yeah. I saw them on Raquel Welch, that Raquel Welch movie.
And with Ringo Starr, yeah.
And Ringo Starr, yeah.
And Ringo Starr.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Next question.
And just before Tara says the next question, I just have to say, Amanda is our resident Beatles expert. Just so you know, if you have any questions about the Beatles, you can ask Amanda. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so does the rotation have anything to do with our physical appearance? I mean, are we tall and basically slender versus short and squat because of that?
Very good question. And, the answer to that depends. We often will talk about what would life be on a planet that's going around a red dwarf star. The time it takes for the planet to go around a star like that, it would be, say, maybe 3 to 5 days, maybe. So that's its year. But the planet itself is going to be locked, one face always facing it. So it won't really have day or night. So there won't be a rotation rate per chance on that planet. So the idea is, what would creatures there look like? Because they're not subject to any rotational velocity. So maybe they'd be more short and squat. Okay. Here on Earth, we actually have, we're lighter. If we travel east, we're lighter than if we travel west. Now, that's hard to understand until you realize we're already rotating toward the east. And it's actually called the Utvush effect. We talked about it last week, I believe. And there's a small component of rotation that goes into making you lighter in weight. In a jet, for instance, to put it in modern terms, if you travel from New York to Los Angeles and you're traveling in a jet, let's assume nonstop, you will be about 0.8 pounds lighter heading out west and about the same heavier coming back. And it's because when you're going out, you're adding to the orbital rotation rate or the Earth's rotation rate, and that slight increase in speed kind of whips you off the planet just a little bit more, if you think of it that way, like a lifting force. And so that's a really interesting thing. So if we say, would our shape change? Well, maybe so. It's possible that we might actually be differently shaped if that happens. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, this has been a science fiction concept for a long time that, we've seen it just in the time astronauts go up and stay on the space station, that the lack of gravity affects them. And it's often been conjectured that, once you start having babies out in space and having babies on the moon and on Mars, that you're going to see human physiology change.
And you're absolutely right, too.
They will be maybe tall and spindly on the moon and maybe sort of the same way on Mars. And If they're on a really heavy planet, they could be short and squat and really stout and muscular.
That's right.
All these things. You look down the road and, that's what we may become.
Right. But if that very massive planet's rotating very fast, then they might actually be taller. Right. And if you took them and brought them to Earth, they could be kind of like supermen, super people, right? Because they would be able to jump higher in the lower gravity that we have, and all of their construction would be suited for a more massive planet, but they're on a lighter planet. So just like on the moon, where astronauts could jump with that heavy spacesuit, about 18 inches in the air in a leap, they could do a similar thing here, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, my Earth name is Daryl, but my Krypton name is Dar-El. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have a Krypton name. Tara, you asked really good questions. But so it depends, in other words. But I think that in earlier days we might have been taller. And I actually thought about that. Maybe that meant that was it possible that slightly faster, about an hour faster a day than the dinosaurs were around, did that make the dinosaurs bigger? It'd have to be a far-reaching effect. But anyway, we'll talk more about this and do more of Tara's Cosmos questions when we get back. Thanks, guys. Stick around. More to come.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
A birthday without her mom. An anniversary without her husband. Her wedding day without her dad. These are the days when military families feel it most of all. The loss of their soldier, their sailor, their airman, their Marine, their Coast Guardsman. Families never forget their loved ones lost to war or illness or suicide. Families never forget, and neither do we. We are TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. We provide resources, support, and comfort to heal the hearts and meet the needs of grieving military families, all at no cost to them. Your generosity can make an enormous difference in the lives of the families of our fallen military heroes. Our military families need to know they are not alone and they are not forgotten. Show them your support at TAPS.org.
Permanent industrial glue impossible to remove? Not anymore, because Handyman Formula by D-Bond is a patented chemical adhesive remover. It's used in the building and home maintenance industry, but now it's available for your home use, for your DIY projects. Unglue stickers, silicone rubber, labels, price tags, flex tape, weather stripping, carpet glue, wood glue, liquid nails, even 3M 5200. And it dissolves graffiti. Yeah, graffiti. Handyman Formula by D-Bond works, and it's safe to use on most surfaces. No need to call a professional. Don't get out the pliers and blowtorch. Just apply a little Handyman Formula by D-Bond and wait 90 seconds, then quickly and easily pull the items apart. Get unstuck. Visit DBondHandymanFormula.com. That's DBondHandymanFormula.com or call 561-575-4200. Handyman Formula by D-Bond.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Sky Tour Radio. This is Mark, who talks too much, and we have Amanda and Daryl, and our special guest tonight is Tara Deulis, who is the artist who did the door for the new Sky Tour Livestream Observatory out in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. So, Tara, you asked us before the break about rotation, dealing with how does rotation over time, could that affect human physical appearance and so forth?
Right.
Yeah. Now, so one thing that's important to understand is that in the universe, everything is rotating. Everything is in motion. There is nothing sitting still, not even the table that you're resting on right now, not the chair you're sitting in. Those atoms are all moving. Everything is in motion. And it's all based on orbits. And I think that's a pretty interesting finding that we learned about back when Niels Bohr was talking about the model of the atom and moving forward in time when we talked about the nature of the universe and galactic rotation and everything. I think that was something that was really one of the most important findings. So the rotation is something that we need to understand and take into account throughout our history. And
Absolutely.
That's yeah, exactly. And so
I brought that up when Tara was on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. That everything's rotating?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. At the smallest level and at the highest level, So so keeping with rotation, I'm guessing you have more questions about rotation.
Well, I do actually. So about rotation. Okay, so it's kind of mixed in with the expansion of the universe. So does the expansion rate of the universe affect the rotation speed? Or, I mean, wouldn't there be another force that would slow the rotation as we move through space?
Conservation of angular momentum.
Yeah, but to answer the question about does the expansion of the universe affect the rotation speed, this goes to something called a reference frame. We have to, from where are you measuring the expansion rate of the universe, right? You're measuring it right from Earth. And you're also looking at the rotation speed of the Earth. And in particular, we're talking about the rotation of the planet Earth as it rotates on its axis. It spins once in a day, right? The day has been really short. It was 4 hours in the beginning, and now it's just under 24 hours, right? So could the expansion of the universe have anything to do with that? That's the question.
That makes me wonder if should we be talking about this during showtime? If the universe really is speeding up in its rate of expansion, I mean, what's that going to do to the conservation of angular momentum?
Well, that is a huge question, and we could probably make that a topic for an entire show, Daryl. Because there's a lot of prep material we would have to explain, right? And talk about, I would think. But that's a good question. So I think that one of the things that we want to consider is that when we talk about the way the universe is expanding versus the way the Earth's rotating, classically we've always viewed those as separate characteristics, not related to each other. And that's because of this reference frame thing. In the reference frame of the solar system, we have the sun and its retinue of planets that are orbiting it. And because of the way forces operate and the way gravity operates and the way electromagnetic radiation is transmitted from the sun, the solar wind, and so forth, we've only classically ever considered what the sun does to us and what its gravity does to us and what the planet's gravities and the moon's gravity does to us. We've never considered the bigger picture of what does the expanding universe do to us, if anything. So I honestly don't know if there is something out there that can relate the two or not. So the question is rather prescient? It's a good question.
Yeah, well, and this goes back to, we talked a few weeks ago, I think, about, with results from the Virgo and LIGO detectors, and ultimately maybe leading toward the unified field theory, the grand theory, whatever you want to call it, that if we get to wrap them up all together, and what kind of ramifications that might have for us way down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, if we can unify them, then it means that we can have everything in the quantum world and the standard model working nicely together. We can have a idea is whether gravity is quantum or not. And what does that mean? Well, basically, it means that the gravitational forces right now, we can calculate them and so forth. We know how to calculate the force of gravity. But what about at the quantum level? Are there quanta of gravity, little packets of gravity, in a sense, like gravitons we're talking about, perhaps? We don't know that. We suspect that could be true. We have photons, and light is dual nature. It acts as a wave and it acts as a particle. Well, does gravity do that? We know it acts as a wave. We found them. But we don't know how else to deal with gravity other than to be able to just calculate it. We don't know the intrinsic nature of gravity. So that's the interesting thing. Now, gravity is, of course, I say of course, like you all know this, but maybe you do, maybe you don't. Gravity is the weakest of the forces that we deal with, okay? The strongest of the force is the force inside the nucleus of an atom. So that's, believe it or not, stronger than the force of gravity. And the way it's measured on the when you look at how far away at the scale of the proton and electron, how far away is the electron from the proton for it to still be attracting an electron and a hydrogen atom to stay in orbit, so to speak, around the proton. And in classical discussions, you wouldn't even say that the electron orbits the atom because of something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You don't know where the electron is at any moment. So it's best to think of the electron as being a cloud around the nucleus of the atom. So that all said, you may not know where it is at any time, but you do know the relative distance of that electron from the proton. And it's a massive relative distance. Massive relative distance. And for that to be the case, that force of that force that we're talking about, that nuclear force, has to be very powerful relative to, say, gravity, the weakest of the forces. And we'll talk about the fundamental forces at some point in the future, but that's not tonight's topic. But that's just giving you an idea. So the expansion rate of the universe probably doesn't affect the rotation speed in our classical view of things. Could that change? Maybe. Maybe so. And maybe we have to include, dark matter in the equation at some point. But that's a good question there, Tara, and I'd love to hear more.
Okay, well, I think let's go with the dark matter then. So if we are moving through this expanding universe and we're flowing in the general direction of, and I can't remember it, Daryl knows this, but isn't it a teapot or something that we're all flowing towards? But does dark matter have anything to do with it then?
Well, first of all, we'll let Daryl, because you addressed Daryl. Daryl, he knows where we're heading in space as a whole. And you can mention that, Daryl, if you want, and take this question if you like.
Well, I can start at least. You start adding up everything about how we are moving in space. We're flying in the general direction of Vega, our solar system is, and the sun is dragging us and all the other planets along with it. Then in the broader sense, we are heading somewhere between Vega or Lyra and the constellation Hercules, I believe, as we rotate around the galaxy. And then our whole galaxy is flying toward the Virgo supercluster, which is, oddly enough, in constellation Virgo in the spring sky. But even past that, you don't hear about this as much as you used to, but there's a thing called the Great Attractor, which the whole Virgo supercluster and us and everything else in our neighborhood are flying toward. We're all headed toward what's called the Great Attractor. And it's not in Sagittarius. It's it's farther south, one of the southern constellations. I forget what it's called offhand. I'd have to look it up. That we're heading that way, and depending on where your reference frame is from, as Mark said, your speed relative to everything else is changing. By the time we're heading toward the Great Attractor, I mean, we are really booking. We're moving at a considerable fraction of the speed of light, ultimately, compared to someplace on the far side of the universe. You know what I mean, the whole reference frame thing. It depends on how close you're going to look with the magnifying glass. And the farther out you look, the faster we're moving relative to that. As for dark matter, I have seen some other stuff recently that still, I'm not particularly a believer in dark matter, and there have been some recent things coming out that are starting to cast doubt on the whole idea of dark matter. Mark, I sent you something the other day that I forget now what it was. If it's almost like a quantum effect where basic particles of matter are being trapped somewhere and causing what we think we see as dark matter.
Yeah, and I read that article. Thank you, Daryl. And one of the things that is really important to understand about the whole concept of dark matter is that it arose out of something we didn't understand. And we had to ascribe something to account for what we observed. So, if anything, dark matter does the job of holding the place of what is really causing it.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's kind of what we're doing now. So until better science comes along, dark matter still exists for me, but it isn't in stone for me. I don't say that dark matter definitely exists, but what is dark matter? It's not dark matter. Doesn't mean it's colored black and so you can't see it. Dark matter means we don't understand it, therefore it's dark. That's what that is. They could have said, unidentifiable matter, but those words don't flow off the tongue. So dark matter sounds better, kind of is what they did. All right, that's literally why it's called dark matter. It's not visible, so we only infer its presence based on what we're seeing.
Right, and as you said, I mean, it's just a convenient placeholder name for something we really don't comprehend yet. And a lot of people, they take it for granted, and gosh, there must be dark matter out there. That's kind of spooky. Well, it may be spooky, but we don't know what it is, and that's why it's spooky.
Yeah, and it arose in part out of an observation of the way galaxies rotate. When you look at a solar system, all the planets closer to the star orbit faster around the star to maintain an orbit, whether circular or elliptical, right? Generally, they move faster near the star, and farther out, they move slow. So in our solar system, Mercury takes 88 days to go around the sun. Pluto takes several hundred years to go around the sun. It's farther away. So you would think that stars in a galaxy that are closer to the middle go really, really fast, and stars that are way out in the edge of a galaxy at the fringe take a lot slower to go around the galaxy. It turns out that the observations are not that. They observe that the way that galaxy rotates is somewhat, not completely, but somewhat like a rigid disk. The stars near the center are traversing at a relatively leisurely pace. The stars on the outside are moving at a rapid, frenetic pace to keep up, as if something is pulling them all along. There's something additional there that's pulling them all along. And I know that's not quite what your question is, Tara, but we're going to get to it because it relates, potentially. So they thought, well, there's some matter there that's actually has its own gravity, has gravity just like any mass does, but there's enough of it so that it's actually making an entire galaxy spin like a rigid body. And for that to happen, there has to be an awful lot of this stuff we can't see, identify, or understand. And that's where dark matter sort of came from. And so galactic rotation was the biggie. So on megascales, in other words, megascales, rotation is affected by dark matter. And you see it right here with galactic rotation. The thing we call dark matter affects galactic rotation. Right?
I think people might have got misled. You know, they would look at spiral galaxies, for instance, and the spiral nature of them. It makes you think, well, golly, they must be spinning faster in the middle and slower on the outside. Yep. And this is before they figured out the density waves is what is actually, making the galaxy look like it does.
That's right.
It's not so much a galaxy itself spinning at a certain rate to make it a spiral. It's that the density waves propagating around and through the galaxy are what is creating that shape.
Right. Now, hold on one second there, Daryl, because I want to make sure people understand the density wave. And I'm going to give you an example of what that is. And to do that, let's go up into the traffic helicopter at rush hour. As the helicopter is going over the highway, you see cars approaching the cars that are slowing down because they're in a traffic jam. And then at the other end of that, you see cars speeding up because they've left the traffic jam. Well, the cars that are slowing down enter the jam, slow down, but then they pass through and speed up. Okay? The cars that are bunched up are a density wave. Okay, that's the concept of a density wave. You don't have the same stars in a galaxy that are all in the density wave. Okay? You have a bunch of stars that are in a compressed area and they move through that density wave. Just like the cars moving through a traffic jam. It's not the same cars that are always in that traffic jam. They eventually go. And the cars that come in behind propagate and continue the traffic jam. That is what a galactic spiral arm is made of, a traffic jam in mega scales. That is how it actually works. And if you think about it that way, it really messes with your head, and you'll just start beating your head against the wall and say, why am I listening to Sky Tour Radio? Okay? But it's okay. It's okay. Now, going to your question, Tara, when we talk about the dark matter having anything to do with it, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with our Earth's rotation, but it does have an influence on rotation. The thing we're calling dark matter does influence rotation, because if it didn't, galaxies wouldn't spin like a rigid disk almost. So that's a very, very good question that you asked. So I really, really wanted to address that.
That's awesome answers, guys. Thanks. Hey, Mark, when you're thinking about the mass of a planet, can anything be figured out about the rotation based on the mass?
Well, first of all, you have to get the mass, okay? And that's one of the big things you do. And the way we can – there's a whole bunch of equations that I could run through about exoplanet orbital periods and mass generation. But instead of going through that, because it's hard on radio. Actually, when we do these as video, I could actually put up a whiteboard and take you through some actual simple calculations to show you how it's done in general. But the bottom line is that if you know the mass of an object, okay, then that object in orbit, okay, you can calculate basically how big the object is based on what's called the transit of the object in front of, say, a star. And then you can calculate, and the mass is the end result. We want the mass at the end. We don't know the mass initially. So, and based on how fast it passes in front of its star, we can calculate where it is in its orbit. We can calculate a lot of parameters about this planet object that we're seeing. But the rotation of the planet itself may very well be independent of the star, all right, and the speed at which it moves, and therefore its mass as well. And we do know that if you have a very, very high mass object, it's probably not going to be spinning very, very fast. If it spins very, very fast, then there's a danger that it could fly apart. It depends on its radius. See, that's the other feature that we want to get with these planets is the radius. So we want the radius, we want the mass, we want the orbital period, how long it takes to go around the star. And that gives us pretty much a lot of the information about an exoplanet, a planet around another star. So to get all that information takes a number of years of study of the data and some really good transit information, like TESS is looking at the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, for instance, like the Kepler Space Telescope did, and then the K2 mission that followed on when they repaired Kepler and continued observing planets. That brought us lots of new data, but the planetary rotation can only be estimated if it's at a certain distance from the star. No matter what the mass, it's probably going to get locked. So you'll know the rotation is basically going to be the speed or the time it takes for it to go through one of its years, because it goes around one time when it's tidally locked to the star. All right. So
its rate of rotation is the same as its rate of revolution, you're saying?
That's correct. The time it takes for it to go through a year is also the time it takes to go through a day. Because of the fact that it's going around, it spins on its axis one time as it goes around its star. That's a tidally locked situation, just like the moon. It spins one time as it goes around the Earth.
Yep, that's why a lunar day is the same as a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a month means a month.
That's exactly right. But we don't call it a month because people say, well, what's the matter? What do you got? You chewing on caramel or something? I have a month.
Yeah, in the old days, again, Native Americans, if they wanted to describe how far something away was, they said either on foot or on horseback, it'd take 1 moon, 2 moon to get there.
That's correct. Yeah. 2 passages of the moon will get you there.
That's your reference frame.
Yeah. So Tara, I guess when it comes down to it, there's a lot of factors that go into determining the mass of a planet, but the rotation rate will vary depending on the proximity of the planet to the star. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So tell me what else you got for us.
Well, we may have touched on this last time, but I just think it's fascinating. Do we know if there is any rotation to the universe itself as a whole?
Ooh. Now, as far as we know, and I actually read a study that was published in one of the journals just recently on this. As far as we know, there's no relationship with rotation at that macro level, at the universe level itself. It doesn't appear that it's rotating. In other words, the cosmic microwave background, the CMB, the leftover remnant of the birth of the universe that we see does not appear to be rotating. So it doesn't have, there's nothing that indicates that it might be now.
We did talk about that a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned that actually, everything in the universe is rotating. Golly, the whole yin-yang thing, you'd think, that maybe the universe itself is rotating as well.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly at that point is when I mentioned that the study indicates, the studies I've read actually indicate that as of now, we don't see any rotation to the universe. Interesting. What else you got for us, Tara? We're running out of time.
Okay.
Okay,
here's a fun one. How do you determine the top of a planet? Is it by their rotation?
Oh, if we used our solar system as a guide, we'd be in a mess because Uranus rotates very differently than Saturn and the Earth and other planets in the solar system. But I guess, again, we talked about reference frames earlier. It's a matter of reference frame. If we look at it from the quote-unquote top, and it's a convention that we use, then it's counterclockwise. If we look at that from the bottom, though, it's clockwise. So if we look at other solar systems elsewhere, other star systems, they're at all angles to us. Some are face on to us, some are edge on, some are the other way. So their planets could be doing clockwise, counterclockwise. It doesn't matter. It's all in how we define it for how we want to understand it.
Yep, and this goes back to dead white males is what it is. Map makers in Europe, they started drawing maps before Columbus ever discovered America or whatever. And hey, they knew what north was, and their convention was to put north at the top. And therefore, when we look at the solar system, we look at solar system north from the sun's point of view, directly above the sun, and that is solar system north, and therefore everything goes counterclockwise.
Exactly.
Maybe the Aborigines in Australia looked at it the other way around.
It's very possible. Aboriginal culture is replete with interesting sky observation. I do have to say, Tara, I think that's enough. That's all we have time for today. But I do want to thank you for joining us once again. And if you have more questions, please send them to us at skytourradio@kgraradio.com. And I'm sure we'll have Tara back to ask some more Tara's Cosmos questions. What do you say to that, Tara?
Sounds awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you very much. And Daryl and Amanda, thank you so much.
Show.
Yeah. And once again, folks, you've wasted another 2 perfectly good hours listening to Sky Tour Radio. Yes, I'm borrowing that from Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers, the former favorite show of mine, Car Talk at NPR. So in any case, I don't attempt to steal it because it's theirs. Thank you for listening to us. Amanda and Daryl and I will see you on the other side of this rotational show. But thank you again to Tara and to all of you. We'll see you next week. And remember, when you go out, keep looking up.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that.
Stay happy.